right. So I'm going to um, go through the Sermon on the Plain again. This time, kind of instead of just kind of taking it as it is, um, just looking at some of the context. So, um, for what for the Sermon on the Plain, and kind of fitting it into uh, who is Jesus talking to, what has just happened, how does that um, how does that impact what Jesus is saying here, right? So we'll start at the top of Luke 6. One Sabbath, Jesus was passing through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick up the heads of grain and rub them in their hands and eat them. But some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus replied, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, took the consecrated bread, and gave it to his companions, and ate what is lawful only for the priests to eat. Then Jesus declared, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" So I think that's a very interesting passage, right? So here's why. Jesus doesn't respond with a legal argument, right? Or how we would think of a legal argument. He responds with a story, right? Um, and not even one that's in the Pentateuch, even, right? And there's a connection here, right? So he's hungry, and God fills them, which I think is interesting, given kind of what happens in the Sermon on the Plain, right? So also, there's this whole Shammai and Hillel argument that's going on in the background of this, with Jesus, kind of siding with Hillel that the the laws are we typically see laws as being these kind of rigid things you did or you didn't, whereas there's this more, for lack of a better word, continuous sort of perspective, but there are deeper principles that the laws are trying to emulate, but they don't do so perfectly. And so to obey the deeper principle, right, you can change, not change, but you follow the higher principle, right, over the specific principle. So I guess that's a perspective on that. Okay. On another Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was withered. Looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, scribes and Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus knew their thoughts and said to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and stand among us." So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" And after looking around at all of them, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and it was restored. But the scribes and the Pharisees were filled with rage and began to discuss one another what they might do to Jesus. So here's another thing, is that there's this healing, right? And if your hands withered, right hand's withered, you're going to not have economic opportunities, shall we say, right? And I find it interesting that he says to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and stand among us," before he heals him, right? So I wonder what would happen if he said no. Would have you received the healing? This goes with Jesus being the Passover lamb, because the Passover lamb is used as identification, right? With it. Jesus is asking people to pick sides. Are you going to pick him, or are you going to pick fear and go against him? In those days, Jesus went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer with God. When daylight came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated as apostles: Simon, who he named Peter, and his brother Andrew, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus and Simon the Zealot, Judas son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. So he's just picked these. So what happens is that he's picked 12 disciples, the 12 apostles, right? And so he's picking them, and then what happens is that Jesus picks them, and he comes down and he stands on this level place, right? And there's a large crowd of his disciples. So his disciples aren't just the 12. It is this larger group of people, right? And there were also a lot of people from all over Judea, Jerusalem, and the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon. And so in Tyre and Sidon are these Gentile sorts of cities, right? And they had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases, and those troubled by unclean spirits were healed. The entire crowd was trying to touch him because the power was coming from him and healing them all. So what's happening is that Jesus looks up at his disciples. Okay, so it's sort of like this amphitheater sort of setup that you have here, right? He picks his disciples. He goes down to this kind of flat amphitheater sort of place. And all these people are coming to him. So he's got his disciples there. He also has this large crowd of people who aren't his disciples, right? And that's the context that he's giving this in, okay? He is talking to his disciples, but he's talking so that, okay, so that everyone can hear, right? So I'm trying to think of a way to parallel this sort of dialectic that he's doing, So here I think Jesus, he's laying out the fundamentals of what it means to be a disciple, right? So say when we go down here to the house built on the rock, right? This is him talking to his disciples, but he's also making an argument to these other people who are there. And I want to see what happens next, right? When Jesus had concluded this discourse in the hearing of the people who went to Capernaum, and this is going to be another aspect of that, right? So what's happening here is he's speaking this in the hearing of all the people, right? And he's saying, hey, you disciples, okay, you want to build your house on the foundation. But he's also saying to everybody, build your house on the right foundation, right? And that is very interesting, Okay, so that's who he's speaking to. So think about this as Jesus speaking to his disciples in a mixed crowd, right? So when he says, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours are the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you, when they insult you and reject your name as evil for the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. For the fathers treated the prophets in the same way. But woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you will hunger. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for their fathers treated the false prophets the same way." Like, I think I think that's probably a very interesting way to open up this discussion that he's having, right? So in the context of him talking to the disciples, this is him both warning them of the cost, right? That this is going to be what happens, right? But also of that there are rewards in heaven, right? And then you also think, okay, what is this doing for kind of the general audience that's listening to him talk to his disciples, right? I don't know necessarily what are they getting out of this here, okay? I think what's happening is that what they're probably getting out of this is that he's coming for people like me, right? All these people are gathered, right? And they're needing something from him, right? Because they're needing to get healed. They're coming to him with their diseases and everything, okay? And I'm betting that quite a few of them here are going to be saying, "Oh, Lord, Lord," right? Okay, so this is where he's like, okay, I'm identifying with you. Poor, hungry, hated, weeping, right? He's identifying with them. And I think he's kind of, to the ones who are already in, right, it's more straightforward. But for those who are like potential disciples, as it were, right? What I think he's saying that he identifies with people, right? Sorry, I've been repeating that for like 6 times. Okay. But to those of you who will listen, okay, so he's kind of addressing a little bit more of the crowd at that moment, right? I say, okay, so he's also setting up stakes, right? So he's saying people will hate you. There is a cost, okay? There is rewards, right? But there's also costs, and he's laying that out. And so he says, okay, some of you want to listen, okay, to me. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone takes your cloak, do not withhold your tunic as well. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. Right? And that it is not, Jesus's comment here is not like, this isn't a new innovation, but it is this radical application. Right? If you love those who love you, what is credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that? Even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them, expecting nothing in return. Then your reward will be great, and you'll be called sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Right? So, he starts, okay, you're going to listen to what I've got to say. Here's where you start. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. This is the starting place for, right? It's kind of how you become a son of God, right? If you're going to listen to me, start here. This is the entry point for them, right? Now, for the disciples, this becomes a bit more of a command, right? This is what you have to do. But for those who are on the outside, this is the entry door, is loving your enemies, right? So, and then we go on to the judging others. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Pour it into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Jesus also told them a parable. Can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. So, I'm not even sure this is like, I guess there's a certain certain pride, I guess you have, a certain privilege where you're like, is this even like a parable? It's almost like an example, So again, you have the promise and the invitation, right? The command and the invitation, right? If you can become fully trained, and you will be like your teacher, right? And there's also this aspect of becoming able to see. Because if the teacher sees, so will you. So, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but fail to notice the beam in your own? How can you say, brother, let me take the speck out of your own eye, while you yourself fail to see the beam in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the beam out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Right? So what is this doing in terms of the disciples and the crowd? Right? Okay, I'm getting a bit tired. So self-examination, right? How do you judge trees, right? Sorry, I'm getting tired here. Yeah. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? I'll show you what he is like who comes to me and hears my words and acts on them. He is like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid his foundation on the rock. When the flood came, the torrent crushed against his house, but could not shake it because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not act on them is like a man who built his house on ground without foundation. The torrent crashed against that house, and immediately it fell, and great was its destruction. Okay. I need to go to bed, so I'm going to cut this a little bit short. So I think there's a lot more to be gained from reading Luke, the Sermon on the Plain, with kind of the lens of the disciple and the world, not just Jews, but also Gentiles as well in it.